hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on perhaps your Thursday lunch, or maybe, I don't know what you guys are doing right now, but thanks so much for joining. Today, we are joined with Pooja and Alina for a session around understanding sustainability and how it can boost your marketing career. And to be honest, I think this session is going to be really, really helpful. Hopefully you find it. So I'm not going to introduce the two here because they can introduce themselves. But if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can try and get through them at the end. But yeah, this sounds like it's going to be a really great session. So I'll just let everyone get on with it. Amazing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you're dialing in from. It's morning for me, so I'm dialing with my morning tea. I'm Dr. Pooja Cosla, and I am in sustainability space since last 25 years. We didn't have fancy names, ESG, SDG, PRI, SRI back then. It was developmental economics for me, and I started my career back at India as a professor in developmental economics. Came here in the United States, joined University of Colorado Boulder, and after doing a lot of research in sustainability, I found that there is a gap in the industry. And this huge gap is that everybody wants to be sustainable, but there are no metrics and no measurement standards that people can follow transparently. There is no single yardstick. So I thought that economies, businesses needs to get this gap addressed. And finally, I joined entrepreneur Tom Stoner and a Nobel laureate, David Schimmel, as a team to work to bridge that gap. Today, the company that we three started is Intelligent. It's been 6-year-old, and we are working with leading PRI signatories like United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund, UBS, SocGen, and eagerly working to address the gaps of metrics, reportings, and standards in sustainability. So that's my journey of sustainability. I would say that there is no secret sauce. You are the secret sauce. There are so many gaps. This discipline is under construction. And whatever blueprint, whatever gap that as a team that you see to fill is a free game over here. And it's the game that we need to address for the better future for all of us. I will pass it to Alina, my colleague now, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Pooja. And this is a little bit about me as well. But before I go into saying a bit about me, I just wanted to tell you a story that's a little bit analogous to how and why I do what I do. And I hope it makes sense, or I'll try and clarify it afterwards. My story goes like this. There was a man who wanted to steal the moon. His little girl wanted to help, but so he wasn't bothered by her. He tore a page out of a magazine that had a map on one side. He tore it into smaller pieces and said, "Take this dismantled world map and see if you can fix it yourself, like a puzzle." Just 2 hours later, she said, "Dad, I'm done. I put everything back together again." He said it isn't possible at your age to reconstruct a map of the world you had never seen before. He expected it to be in a pickle. It wasn't. It was complete. He said, "How did you do that? How did you put the world back together?" She said, "I don't know the world, but I saw on the other side a picture of a man. When you gave me the world to fix, I tried but couldn't. Then I flipped all the pieces over and started to fix the man. And when I fixed the man, I turned it over and saw the world had been fixed as well." And what this story is trying to highlight is I potentially am that little girl, that person that wanted to fix the world, but realized that fixing the world is quite a big challenge. And what I realized that's quite important is how can we fix each and every one of us individually? And together that can add up to make a great big change. So what that means is, as I do sustainable research, focusing on how we can encourage behaviours that help preserve the planet, promote the well-being of the planet, thank you, and promote the well-being of the planet. And by doing that together, it can make a big change. I do this research at the Newcastle University. I look at specifically how our identities, how we see ourselves, such as a researcher, such as now I've become a mum, and how that influences our behaviour. And I was delighted back in 2020, thank you, to win Best Paper Award for my very first research paper that I ever wrote on the topic of identity in sustainable research. I also, and this is how I became to know Pooja, Ed, who sadly can't be with us, but we'll look at this afterwards, I'm sure, and Giorgio. I became a lecturer at Warwick Business School, and that's how I met these people, and that's how I become to, with you, share what I do today. Also, as a side, I do love teaching, and I was delighted to win an award for that as well. And it just shows that every small change, I believe, can help you make a big impact, and it's taking those small steps to get to that end goal. Thank you, Pooja. I pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Alina. Thanks for the beautiful story. And I believe that story motivates everybody to fix a little bit of world every day, because small changes will lead to big, big gains. So let's start with the small changes that we can do together every day.
So this is a slide that represents one of the first challenges that I faced in research, and about that paper I mentioned just a minute ago that I wrote on identity in sustainability. And what I found is that we can define it, and I decided based on my understanding of the literature to define it in the way of 3 Ps, not the marketing Ps, but a sustainable Ps: preserve, prevent, and promote when it comes to the planet. However, in the literature, as you can see on this slide, just a few examples, I found over 600 different definitions and terms used to explain sustainability. And my only advice is to make sure that you know what your definition is, how you understand it, define it, and would like to measure or operationalize it, so that we know how to actually change the behaviour in your organisation, for example. And Pooja, please add to this.
I would totally agree with Alina over here. I'm sitting at a place where my day job is to work with huge family offices, work with a lot of capital market solutions, where with the power of capital markets and money, we can address planetary sustainability issue. And from the biggest family offices in Europe, US, Australia, I have seen that definition of sustainability is still under construction. We all want to bring a change, but what, where, how, and how we can measure this change are still under research. So there is no good, bad definition of sustainability. As I told you that I am an economist, trained economist, and I believe that sustainability is under monopolistic competition area where we don't have a single product. We'll have different products that you can adapt to, that I can adapt to, that your friends can adapt to. And that is okay if we define sustainability in different terms, different languages. But what important here is the measurements and metrics. There is a thin line between green and greenwashing. It is okay to define green, but work on the definition honestly, on your definition honestly. That is where we really want to stick world, or that is where we have to really measure world, that we give them freedom to define sustainability, but we make them accountable to work on their definition of sustainability. The rise of sustainability. So we are living in a world of awakening of sustainability. The definitions have been created, lot of changes from multiple market stakeholders have been observed, from producers, consumers, investors around the world. If you will look closely, over $30 trillion is now invested in sustainable assets. Bloomberg estimates this number to rise to 50 trillion by 2025. So despite the most necessary and important thing, sustainability is where the future is in terms of finance as well. Not only the corporations are pushing sustainability, but we are living in the world of changing regulations as well. And I really respect people joining from Europe because you guys are leaders in sustainability. You guys have government standards which are already set, and accountability is observed, and the rules and restrictions are tightened. US is still working. SEC in US, Security Exchange Commission in US, is still passing the bill on sustainability, which Europe has already done. But definitely, if we look about money on the government, about $2 trillion dollars are available for US Green Deal. UK has committed legally to binding targets in 2008 Climate Change Act. We see more and more consumer activism. To be honest, I see that people in our generation do not hoard things. They buy things, even a small thing, if they really need it. And I'm so happy that our kids are learning it even before us, that if you need a toy, think 10 times whether you need an additional toy. It's not about money anymore to show how many things you are. The current fashion is sustainability. You recycle, you manage, you are reusing. In fact, here I see a lot of people are going to secondhand stores to buy stuff. So sustainability is the new fashion, because saving the planet is the new fashion, and consumers are getting this mass message cleaner and clearer every day. We have seen a lot of transition at company level where the sustainability officer is moved from the basement of the company to the boardroom of the company, where sustainability is becoming the face of the company from C-suite. So I think that all stakeholders, consumers, producers, government, investors, planning commissions, they all are together in the same battle of sustainability. There is a lot of research coming up. There are a lot of promises coming up. What we as educated world can do is make sure that everybody keeps their promises. They stick to their promises, and we develop the measured yardstick to make sure that these promises are accomplished, not in 10 years, not in 30 years, but every quarter of the year before we realize it's too late to change the world. So as we will see, the consumer needs are changing so fast, so fast. Our packaging of the goods, our ingredient of the goods, the choices of sustainable goods we have in markets, they are changing at a very rapid speed. 24% of consumers are actively cutting their plastic waste. In Europe, preserving nature is ranked 6th. Energy efficiency is rising. We are more conscious about the trips we are taking, how many times we are using aeroplanes per year than ever before. EV market is a beautiful example over here. 5 years ago, there was one Tesla in the neighborhood. Now we see here where I stay, at least 5% of the cars we see on the road are electric. Look, not only Tesla, but Ford, General Motors, everybody is coming up with their electric cars. What gives me the most relief is that even the heavy vehicles in construction agencies are getting electrified. And if I go to construction sites and I see electrified bobcats, I feel so happy that this is the world I want to live in. And this is what we want to see more and more, the economic transitions. People, especially in the supply chain, are getting more and more conscious about measuring sustainability. Unilever. I love this quote. We will soon be asking our suppliers to put their carbon footprints figures on their invoices so we know what we are buying. I hope I see a world where I go to shopping and I buy anything, food, or any toy for my kids. I can see what is the carbon footprint of that commodity before I pay for it. I am waiting to live on that world. And I'm pretty sure we are very close to that, where the carbon footprint of the goods that we buy will be reported transparently. Another beautiful quote. I'm currently working on UN program to define how we measure suppliers' sustainability in healthcare. Climate change consultant, global service firm. We really have to reach this world soon before we miss the train. There will be definitely more emphasis on tracking the total carbon footprint of our suppliers in future. Developmental manager, food and drink procurement firm. So look, everybody is demanding metrics. Everybody is demanding quantification of sustainability. And soon we will have this data available on our fingertips. And what is this data going to do? It will make us help to make better choices with every penny we spend. And we really are at a point where we have to make these choices before we have no choice on the table with our planet. Changing demand of EVs. We are seeing that totally exponentially, and we want to see it more. There are new consumer segments coming, purpose-driven segment. 40% of the transition is already in place. We are seeing slow death of dirty segments. Fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas are phasing away. And we really have to accelerate, speed up this phase out. We have to be a part of this change instead of waiting for the change. There are two types of people. One who always wait for the change, second who becomes the part of the change. And I choose to be the second one. And we all want to become the part of the change, not to just wait for the change. Innovation in all areas, including digital. Our lifestyle have changed so significantly. COVID has taught us better. We use our car better than before. Hybrid lifestyles. If you don't need to travel for the meetings or big conferences, if they can be digital, see how much carbon footprint we have saved with this new digital change that we are living in. Another beautiful inventions that I see today are in the commodity space. Bite toothpaste is a very good one, where we are getting the plastic out from our morning routine. Life Water, the wonderful work they are doing with the packaging, leaving the plastics away, setting the trend for not only themselves, but a lot of followers that will follow this trend. So innovations are coming from everywhere. What we can do as consumer is that to bank on those innovations, respect on those innovations, adopt those innovations, and scale those innovations so we can be sustainable before we can even think of. Come and think about the economic multiplier effect, where if everybody changes small things from their routine, globally, this change will multiply and we will see a bigger impact that we can dream to see. I love when I see how many jobs in sustainability have been created since last year's. Chief Sustainability Officer, the most desired position these days. Eco-builders, love what is happening in the real estate sector with the green and retro builders. I work with a friend, Third Act, who is building the houses and renovating the old houses and getting them fit for future by maximizing the energy efficiency in the houses, by changing the trajectory of the houses. Renewable energy engineers, sustainability consultants, lovely job where you can go into the organizations, read, define the problems, and propose actionable solutions where sustainability pathways and changes can be taken at a higher speed, green fashion designer, climate scientist. I'm privileged to work with a team of climate scientists and mine climate models every day as my day job, hydrologist, urban farmers, carbon and energy research assistants, lecturers in sustainability, environmental lawyers. So we are living in a world where there are multiple jobs created in sustainability areas. This will be the future. There will be the future demand. And we all will get a little bit of opportunity with our education to add to this sustainable future. I will let Alina now to present.
Thank you, Pooja. And it kind of leads on from the previous slide, how there's multiple jobs and there's multiple bits of knowledge that we need to know about in order to become sustainable. And everybody brings a new perspective or their own perspective to that table. And so what we've done here is sort of create a 5-step process to kind of guide people through how we can become sustainable together. And it's an iterative process. You don't just start at number 1 and finish at number 5 and that's it. You might go back and forth between steps depending on how it works. Also, this is kind of an approach where it relies on and goes back to the idea that we have multiple different stakeholders potentially that are all very, very important, and they need to co-create, co-design and participate together in order to meet the goals. Because what one person needs, which is to make profits, might not necessarily map onto what other persons need, which is to reduce that carbon footprint. And no one perspective is correct. The idea is that what we have to first do is educate ourselves about all the organizations. Step 1, find out what the needs are and how together you can think about becoming sustainable so each person's goals are met. And then what you can do is lead on to step 2, where you can actually think about who within your organization and network could actually make that change, who has the power to do that, who makes the policies and who makes the purchases, who are your suppliers when you're doing business interactions, and working together to think about what that can achieve in order to become sustainable. And then from finding of these networks, what you can see is there might be some key areas, step 3, where you can focus and identify what areas can you improve on, what opportunities are available for you to become more sustainable, where are there gaps, where do you need to find different suppliers or renegotiate some of the terms and conditions in order to enable you to become more sustainable collectively. And from identifying those key areas, you can then make an action plan, which is step 4. Think about how you can, for you and your organization, be integral and honest about how you want to be sustainable, recognizing that sometimes you can't always do that. And it's not about being optimal all the time. It's a balancing act about in some areas you can be sustainable, in other areas it becomes unfeasible. And so it's about just reducing that as much as you can rather than having it completely achieved, and recognizing it's a journey that you have to go on and planning for that journey. And then the final step is, of course, let's implement the plan. Let's not just talk about it. Let's make a change. Let's try and pilot study these ideas that you want for change. Sometimes, like for example, when we've done it within an institution at university, we've implemented some new energy initiatives and policies on a very, very small scale. We did it within the accommodation and we focused on one block of flats, for example, just to see how feasible it was to implement some of the initiatives, such as having automation and central processing for heating rather than relying on the staff or students to change their heating, which would help us implement a change, gaining some feedback whether people liked that implementation, which then enables us to revisit some of these steps that we have in the 5-step process. And that brings me to the end of what I'd like to add, but Pooja, please do suggest anything that you can bring to the table.
So I would like to highlight two very important points that Alina made in this slide. The first important point is that sustainability is not a straight line from A to B, it's a circle. You can take any step, but what is important is that you have to take a step and you have to be in the circle and move in the circle to expand the circumference of your impact. So you have to work on the radius to expand the circumference of the impact. But if you start from focus, education, or implementation, you have to start. It's a circle. Second thing, what Alina said, which is very, very important, is that implementation. We need more action and less planning. We are seeing a lot of planning around us, and we cannot afford, with the time we have, for perfect to be an enemy of good. Nobody has a perfect solution for sustainability, but we all have a lot of good solutions. So it is very important to start with the good solutions that we have, experiment, learn, and grow instead of waiting for the perfect solution. So implementation is action, is the need of today. Planning was the need of yesterday. We have enough of it.
And this is highlighting, again, some of the things about step one, where I always like to begin to start with, which is education. And that's where I am at the moment in that sector. But it's the idea that actually we do sometimes need to just gain more knowledge from people and from different sectors, and realizing, for example, I came from originally a background in forensic science, then I moved into anthropology, and now I've moved into marketing and business. And all of that journey has taught me that each sector sees the world very differently, and how we communicate between people is very, very different. And sometimes we don't necessarily always understand how best to communicate. And that's what led me to conduct this research, for example, that I'd love to share with you. It was where we realized that actually people like you and I can be segmented, we can be divided up, so we can understand how different people can be divided up in terms of what motivates them. And people can be divided up by what opportunities literally physically they have. For example, whether you have superstores that enable you to not consume plastic or not. And also we can be divided up based on our capabilities, our knowledge. I talk to some people, they might know lots about forensic science. I talk about other people and they've never heard of it. And it's really important to recognize all these different gaps and nuances between people. And depending on how we divide the people up in terms of these three circles that you see on the screen, will depend on what type of behaviors people are likely or more likely to do. For example, in terms of sustainability, if people are very sustainable, psychologically motivated, have all the physical opportunities available, and are aware, physically aware of and have the capabilities and knowledge about this information that often is very complicated, we would expect a lot of behavior to happen because it's easy, it's accessible. However, not everybody fits nicely on that high level. And what we have to do is recognize that we might not know everything, and to first, like you are doing all today, which is fantastic, getting that education, that first step. Thank you, Pooja, and please do add from your experiences as well.
Alina, what you said really had an impact on me, that everybody has a little bit of sustainability inside it. It's just like we have some behavioral differences, but every one of us can, be mapped to one of the circle over here. That makes me so happy that we just have to, amplify that little sustainability that everybody have inside.
That leads on to the next one, which taps into that first circle that I talked about, the psychological motivation. And this is specifically some things that I've been doing in my work. And there's lots and lots of different factors that can motivate us. But one very important one that we've recognized is this factor, which is about our value orientations. So how we see ourselves. And we can see ourselves in multiple different ways, as you can see by the 4 things on the screen. We can see ourselves as a very altruistic person, but as Pooja sort of quite rightly said, it's like a spectrum. We're not just completely altruistic or completely unaltruistic. We like to help people, and more or less depending on the context, as well as we also have this very big need, especially as today, and Pooja did mention that consumers are driving this necessity, that we have this biospheric value. We very, very much care for the biosphere, the world, the planet, and all living creatures on it. And actually we want it to be sustainable. And some people have that more or less depending on what they feel is more important. And of course, and this is so essential, and people sometimes feel a sense of psychological reactance when you say that we are egocentric or egoistic, but we have to be. If you don't support yourself first, how can you support the planet or other people? And it's very, very important to recognize when you need to be egoistic because something is wrong and your safety and your company's safety is being breached, or when actually perhaps you don't need to be so egocentric. It is possible to forgo some certain things within your organization in order to become more biospheric and altruistic. And it's a spectrum and it changes depending on what context you are in. And finally, this hedonic area became out more recently important because of realizing that actually getting the life and fun balance is very important in one's well-being. And this hedonic, meaning fun, is very important for motivating us to be happy. We have to enjoy what we're doing. And sometimes we realize it's important to just get on with things and not to have fun, but actually it is all important, especially to encourage sustainability, that it can be fun. And what we've noticed is that, as you can see by this radar, as Ed introduced this sort of way of explaining it, a colleague, that actually you can score in different ways: altruistic, biospheric, egoistic, and hedonic, as much as or as little depending on the context. And actually what's important is all of those factors together, when these are all aligned, when sustainability is fun, it helps people, it helps the planet, and also it does preserve your organization. We will see optimal sustainability, and balancing those out is actually really important for yourself and your companies and for a marketing strategy. And please do add yourself, Pooja, if you have anything.
Alina, what you said is very important. Sustainability is fun. It is fun because it makes us happy. It makes us happy because it gives us longevity of planet, longevity of our children, longevity of our grandchildren. And what can make us more happy than, seeing our children and grandchildren thriving 50, 80 years from now?
And this is our final content slide. And this is definitely, I think, something Pooja will recognize as important. And she mentioned this right at the very beginning when we talked about the idea of defining sustainability and the key thing of operationalizing, measuring what is that impact, in the same way that she also mentioned that we have metrics for the carbon footprint. We have in psychology metrics to understand people, and those 4 factors that I presented to you have statements that are aligned to those factors, as you can see on screen, and it enables us to identify or tap into what extent somebody sees themselves as altruistic or not. And this was something that was done, and it started off right in the early 70s, and it's been continued to be used today. And that's something that I'd also like to highlight, is that sometimes it's really, really important to recognize what people have been saying over and over again, that actually perhaps we need to listen and we need to use that and remember that a change and understanding our motivations are really, really important. And this is just an abridged version of how you can ask those questions to yourselves. And it would be interesting to see if you'd like to ask them yourself at home in your own comfort, to see how you score and how you might see yourselves, to understand what would motivate you to become more sustainable. Because like I said right at the beginning, to become sustainable has to start with you, the individual, to start with, and then that can be used to then snowball and influence other people, and then collectively make a change. And Pooja, please do add, because I know metrics is very much your field.
I would just say, Alina, that I totally agree. And I started this conversation with this beautiful team over here, is that there is no secret sauce in sustainability. It is you. So recognize you, yourself, as sustainability creator, adapter, and influencer, all three of them together. So here we come to the end of our presentation. But I am so happy to see so many beautiful women here listening to me and Alina. You know what? My day job, I say, is 11, 12 hours of meetings. And there are very few meetings where I meet women. So this is the morning meeting, 6 a.m. with so many women over here. It makes me so proud that we together are starting our journey of sustainability by taking the first step, learning about sustainability. And soon we will be the influencer of sustainability, spreading it across the globe together with one purpose. That is, we all are for planet here. Now, I know that you may have questions, and I want to reserve the last few minutes we have to address your questions over here.
Amazing. Thank you so much, both of you. That was really, really useful and definitely very inspiring as well. I know a lot of people have said that. So if you do want to learn more about sustainability and how it kind of impacts your career in marketing, Oxford College of Marketing run a Speak Sustainability course that they're offering 25% off with the code SPEAK25. So definitely go over to their website and have a look at that as well. So questions, does anyone want to ask any questions while we've got these lovely professionals with us? So someone said, what are your thoughts on using hydrogen as a source of energy? Either of you want to take it?
Do you want to start that, Pooja?
I can start that. So my thoughts are mixed over here, because definitely phasing out oil, coal, and other fossil fuel is important. And hydrogen is an option to phase out the fossil fuel fast, but not sure whether it is the best option on the table. So my fear sometimes is that we may not choose wrong options to get something right. And I have very mixed opinions about hydrogen personally. But yes, that is one option on the table for sure.
Fab. And someone said, someone's already answered it, about the 3 Ps for sustainability, but it was preserve, prevent, and promote. Is that right? Fabulous. Katie said, what news sources and outlets would you recommend for staying on top of the latest news when it comes to sustainability?
Alina, do you want to take it?
Do you want to start it first? And then I could do the academic side of how you can get the information.
So I can start with the 3 P's: preserve, prevent, and promote. So preserve is the goal. How we can set up metrics about preservance is that it's very important to account for what we have today. And because if we don't have an inventory of today, we don't know what we are preserving. So getting better idea about what resources we have today and accounting for them is the first step. Prevent. So prevent is that what are our options on the table? And there will be good options, as I said, and there will be best options. Now, here is where the economic problem of choice comes into the picture, that how we can prioritize the options that are better than others. For instance, like especially the consumption of fuels, right? There are a lot of mixed opinions between hydrogen. There are a lot of mixed opinions between biofuels. And we have alternatives like solar and wind farms also with a mixed opinion. And to be very honest, there is nothing called the best option. Like we talk about electrifications, EVs, and people ask me, do you know from where the electricity to charge those cars coming from? Is your electric provider Excel? Is it fossil fuel based, or it is wind or renewable based? If you will look into supply chain, you can connect the dots and find, there is some kind of prevention which is missing. So the degree of prevention is very important, that we will not get a best solution, we'll not get a perfect solution, but what is the good solution? So being a mathematician, I believe in, slopes. Being a mathematician, I believe in first order differentiation, which look at change, the deltas, to see where deltas are the maximum. We cannot go to zero. Zero is the dream, but it's not the possibility in the world today. We can camp for some days, but not all days of our life inwards. So we have to look into reductions and focus on preventions where these reductions are the maximum. And that's the practical way to approach this problem. And we have to promote where this carbon reductions or climate reductions or the change is maximum.
So to add on more another note, sort of academic or practical. So one way to get up-to-date knowledge I would probably suggest is, and if you already know this, is on LinkedIn. If you sign up on LinkedIn and create a profile, you can follow certain people or certain hashtags, I think it's called. And one of them specifically is the IPCC report that came out very, very recently this year. And if you follow this on LinkedIn, they have loads of news that they update on, say, it's like a Facebook news feed, but it's for like other people, organizations and businesses, academics and everything to post. And on here, you could follow certain types of people like IPCC who post new information. And sometimes it's really heavy information, like the report that came out that was very many pages, but also there's lots of abridged versions of that information or summaries or videos that you can look into. Another thing from an academic side is, and it's going to sound very simple, so please bear with me. And sorry if you already know this, but what I would do is Google Scholar, type into your search engine. And when you type in this information, you can then, it's basically an academic tool for finding out all the research papers that are done on the topic of whatever you like, literally anything. And so what you could do is when you type in Google Scholar and click the first hit, visit the actual web page that it offers, type in, it creates this like new search engine, but under Scholar, and then type in some keywords that you're interested in, like sustainability and marketing. And then when you click on that, on the left-hand side of your screen, you can actually filter, sort, and things like that between recent or not recent to identify what papers are being published on the topic of sustainability in the area that you are specifically interested in. And that's a really good way of addressing or getting that evidence base, because I noticed there were some questions about that. So how do you convince people to do certain things or to make a change? And the best way to convince people is with evidence, and finding how that evidence can influence your organization positively, and creating, like we said in the 5 steps, that action plan that is easy, that you have basically taken out all of the hard work and you've made it feasible and practical and beneficial to implement, even if it's on a small scale versus a large scale, and making sure that it doesn't cost the managers more time and more effort to do something when it becomes making a change. Because one of the biggest factors I found in my research, and it's been said for this for absolutely years, is that changing people's habits are one of the hardest things to change. And in order to change the habit, what we did, nudge people in the right direction, make people understand that they can change their behaviors on a daily basis, or we can make it easy for them to do, rather than making a massive change in the here and now. Sometimes you have to do those smaller steps to get to that big change. A bit like I said with the puzzle, you don't just complete the puzzle of the world entirely, you have to make those small steps. Another random thing I will suggest as well is, I will write it in the chat, which is really, really good for, and you probably know this, it's Cialdini. How do I spell persuasion? Excuse any spelling errors, but there's this book by Cialdini in 1991, and you can even just Google his name and Google persuasion, and this gives you some 7 tips of how to persuade people to make a change. How can you influence people in a positive way with integrity as well? And one of the key approaches is this idea, foot in the door. So do something a little bit, like create a little change, get your foot in the door. And then when your manager sees that that's successful, then they're more willing to make these extra changes. Yes, I will pass back over to the girls in marketing team. Apologies for just addressing some of the questions. It just popped into my head when I noticed it on the screen. But yes, please make sure we don't miss other people.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just looking because some of the questions are quite similar. So I just seen Rebecca said that they're putting together a business case to get some sustainability training, and wondering how would you recommend me going about convincing my company to start looking at the view of me sliding into a more sustainability officer position down the line. Because I think for a lot of people, they want to kind of make that change, but it might be hard to like approach their employer about it, to kind of help with that training and learning more. So I don't know if either of you have any advice for how people can do that.
I would say that sustainability is a mission and a mandate for most of the organizations in the current area. And especially if you can reach to your employers through emails, through conference rooms, through having one-on-one conversations. And if you can influence other people to join this movement with you, your companies will be more than happy to bring sustainability as a major streamline in their work processes. It's just like, sometimes people ignore things because they think there is no need. But if you will show that there is a need and employees are demanding it, companies do listen to employees, and you will soon see the position of sustainability officer that you desire to see as a front face of your company.
Fabulous. Someone said, I have a background in copywriting and fashion with an English degree. Dream job would be to become a fashion sustainability consultant. They've basically said, would they need a master's degree, and if to get there, if not, what would the route be, and if so, what would the route be?
So I am not expert over here because I know that both Alina and I have a very different educational backgrounds. Like I don't know how in my life I ended up with 4 masters and a PhD, but I believe is that your passion towards becoming what you want to become is very important. Your visibility of becoming what you want to become is very important. So a master's degree is always a good add-on because you will start at a higher level in whatever company you wish to be in. But definitely if you can get some experience, live experience, maybe as an intern, maybe as a contributor where people can see your work, see what you can do with sustainability fashion, bring more visibility online of your work of sustainability fashion, that it will be very important with or without a master's degree. So be visible with your passion.
I'd like to add, if you don't mind, I just had a quick look on the internet as well, and I found that there's basically literally, if you type in how do I get into sustainable fashion as a career, there's a link that I put on the online for you. So follow that link because it gives you some tips and ideas, and it says exactly what Pooja was sort of saying, like you don't need a master's degree necessarily to get into it. What is really important is getting that experience, getting that profile relating to sustainable fashion. So some of the things it really highlights, again, getting your LinkedIn profile up to date and writing what experiences you have got. And then if you have gaps in your experience, trying to find other organizations that are into sustainable fashion and approaching them and asking if you could either volunteer or work for them to try and get that sort of foot in the door, get that starting point for you. And it's not my area specifically sustainable fashion, but I'm working with a student at the moment who is interested in understanding this in her master's dissertation. And so if you do want to contact me, maybe in a few more weeks, I might have a bit more knowledge on the area and can provide you some more insights. So please, and this is to all of you, I am here if you would like to know anything more, or if I could at least signpost you to people that might know more about the topic.
Fabulous.
So that's okay.
And I have also added a link where there are 25 big brands who are very much closely working with sustainability fashions and clothing areas. So, maybe start looking for an internship or start looking for a good start because your philosophy, your passion is so much in alignment with the work these big organizations are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry because we won't be able to get through any of the questions, but as being said, definitely contact either Pooja or Alina about any questions if it is kind of specific to that. So just one more before we finish. Someone has said about what's your recommendation for convincing senior management about the importance of bringing this into our business plans? Would it be more likely to resonate by bringing in a sustainability consultant, as that would be, have an effect on kind of business reports?
So I would recommend that a sustainability consultant is a good idea, but sustainability starts from inside the organization. So a consultant will work for the organization on organizational mission and mandates. So the first step will always be work with the senior organization to have mission and a mandate for sustainability. And then what has to be done to achieve that goal, whether it's getting a consultant in, whether it's getting a permanent hire in the company who will drive these goals or mission for sustainability, it will depend upon what resources your company has, how much experience it has, and what is their goal and what is their road to reach the sustainability goal. So the first step will be get the planning, goals, targets in the organization in, because even without targets, consultants cannot work because they don't know what they have to deliver.
Do you have anything to add to that, Alina?
Apologies for my little son in the background. My husband's just taking him outside for a walk, which is good. What I'd like to add is I put a link on the internet for you that might help as well. And it gives you some tips in addition to what I mentioned about the Cialdini 1991, like the powers of persuasion. So it gives you some extra ideas about how you can convince your leaders or the managers to change their behaviors. And I don't really have much more to add apart from just remember to make your ideas very concrete, very operational, and the key one is feasible. Make sure if you were to implement the idea that you are interested to change, that it can be implemented. You know how to make that happen, and you know who to contact to make that happen before you approach them, because these people are even more so busy than yourselves, I'm sure. And so they will need that extra support to ensure that you can go with the ideas without having to make extra work for them. Another really good idea is to create it, as I think Pooja mentioned this as well, like get people on board, see if there's other people within your team that also agree with this information, that agree and can support this as well. And finally, when you get everyone together that can support you, that would be good to create and have a meeting with every person that's available that also supports this idea. So there's the power of the group, the social influence, and link that back. I think Pooja mentioned this, but maybe I misunderstood. Link it back to that mandate or the policies of your organization that state that they need to be more sustainable, so that they know and they are reminded that actually this is something that they need to do for their organization to continue with this integrity of being sustainable. I hope those insights help, and of course it's a bit of trial and error and practice on other people before going to your manager first to see what they think about your ideas and arguments for making a change.
Fabulous. Well, thank you both so much. I'm going to kind of finish off now. Some really, really great questions. As I said, feel free to connect with both, ask any questions you need. Also, check out the course if you are interested in understanding more about sustainability and how you can kind of implement that more into your life as a marketer. The code is SPEAK25 for anyone wondering, and that's 25% off the course. So hopefully that was really helpful. It's been great having you two with us. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone's really enjoyed it. Everyone's saying thank you in the chat now. So yeah, thank you all for coming and giving up some of your afternoon to have this presentation. And yeah, see you all soon. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. And we are excited to see your sustainability journey. So we need more of you.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.